Welcome to News Beacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. On September 15, 2025, panic gripped the world. The day began like any other, but within hours, a sense of dread swept across continents. People everywhere stopped what they were doing, glued to their screens as breaking news alerts flashed in every language. The world seemed to hold its breath, uncertain of what would come next. Major news outlets interrupted regular programming to report what appeared to be the outbreak of a massive new war in the Middle East. Headlines screamed that Qatar and several other Arab nations had declared war on Israel. The news spread like wildfire, with every major network and newspaper echoing the same alarming message. For many, it felt like history was repeating itself, with the specter of a regional war threatening to engulf the world once again. The reports described scenes of chaos, missile strikes lighting up the night sky, military convoys racing through the desert, and explosions rocking cities across the Middle East. Social media was flooded with unverified videos and images, adding to the confusion and fear. The world watched in horror, unsure if these were the first moments of a catastrophic regional conflict. The fear was palpable, especially in cities like Tel Aviv, where the population was already on edge from the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Families huddled together, watching the news with anxious faces, while soldiers patrolled the streets, bracing for the worst. The sense of uncertainty was overwhelming, as rumors and speculation filled the air. Social media and news channels amplified the panic, spreading the alarming news to every corner of the globe. Stock markets plummeted as investors reacted to the possibility of a wider conflict, and oil prices surged amid fears of supply disruptions. People everywhere checked their phones for updates, desperate for any sign of hope or clarity. Governments scrambled for clarity amid the chaos. Diplomatic hotlines buzzed as world leaders sought answers, and emergency meetings were convened in capitals from Washington to Moscow. Press conferences were hastily arranged, but officials struggled to separate fact from fiction in the fog of breaking news. In reality, no formal war declaration had actually occurred, but the confusion and misinformation pushed the Middle East closer to the brink of conflict than it had been in years. Borders were placed on high alert, and military forces across the region prepared for the worst, unsure of what might happen next. The initial reports, it turned out, stemmed from a misunderstanding of a critical diplomatic meeting in Doha, Qatar. As diplomats gathered to discuss the escalating crisis, rumors swirled outside the conference center, fueling speculation and fear. The real story was far more complex, a severe diplomatic crisis triggered by a controversial Israeli military action. The world's attention shifted from rumors of war to the urgent need for diplomacy, as protests erupted and diplomats scrambled to contain the fallout. To truly understand how the world reached this moment of crisis, we must look back at the chain of events that led to that 10th September day, a day when the world stood on the edge, waiting to see if a new war had begun. The crisis began on September 9, 2025, when the world awoke to shocking headlines and urgent news alerts. The international community was caught off guard as reports poured in of a major military incident in the heart of the Gulf. The day would mark a turning point in Middle Eastern geopolitics as a sense of disbelief and anxiety swept across capitals from Washington to Riyadh. In the early hours, an unprecedented Israeli airstrike struck the city of Doha, Qatar, shattering the calm of the capital. The attack was swift and precise, targeting a specific building believed to be a safe haven for high-ranking members of Hamas. The world watched in real time as images of smoke and chaos emerged from one of the region's most modern cities. This marked the first time Israel had ever launched a public military operation on Qatari soil. The strike was aimed directly at Hamas leaders living in exile, individuals long considered untouchable due to Qatar's diplomatic protections. The attack sent shockwaves through the region, raising questions about the future of safe havens for political groups and exiles. The operation's objective was to eliminate the upper echelon of Hamas leadership. While the strike did succeed in killing 5 prominent Hamas members, it failed to neutralize all its intended targets. Tragically, a Qatari security agent was also killed in the crossfire, further complicating the diplomatic fallout and fueling anger within Qatar. What made the attack even more controversial was that it was carried out without any prior warning to the United States, Israel's closest ally. This unilateral action blindsided American officials, who were left scrambling to respond to the rapidly unfolding crisis. The move immediately strained the long-standing partnership between Israel and the U.S., raising concerns about coordination and trust at the highest levels. Qatar is home to Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, hosting thousands of American troops and advanced military assets. By launching a strike so close to this critical base, Israel took a significant risk, potentially endangering U.S. personnel and assets, and raising the specter of unintended escalation between allies. The operation was immediately condemned by Qatari officials, who called it a blatant violation of their sovereignty and an act of aggression. Protests erupted in Doha, with citizens demanding accountability and justice. The strike was widely seen as a dangerous escalation, threatening to destabilize not just Qatar, but the entire Gulf region. Outrage quickly spread across the Arab world. In capitals from Cairo to Amman, demonstrators took to the streets, denouncing Israel's actions and calling for solidarity with Qatar. The Arab League convened an emergency summit, bringing together leaders to address the crisis and discuss a unified response to what many saw as a dangerous precedent. Israel, however, remained defiant. Officials made it clear that their message was unmistakable. They would pursue their enemies wherever they hid, regardless of international borders or diplomatic consequences. The world watched as Israel signaled a new, more aggressive approach to its security threats. This bold and controversial action set the stage for a major diplomatic showdown. International diplomats rushed to contain the fallout, holding urgent meetings at the United Nations and in capitals around the world. The crisis threatened to upend alliances and redraw the lines of engagement in the Middle East. The strike exposed deep divisions within the region, as some governments quietly supported Israel's determination, while others condemned the attack as reckless and destabilizing. Analysts warned that the potential for a broader conflict was now higher than ever, with military buildups reported along several borders. Across the Middle East, ordinary people watched the news with a mix of fear and uncertainty. In Doha, the usually bustling streets fell quiet as military vehicles patrolled and residents braced for what might come next. The entire region was on edge, waiting to see how the world would respond to Israel's aggressive new stance. As diplomats gathered for high-stakes negotiations, the world held its breath. The unprecedented strike in Qatar had set in motion a series of events that would test alliances, challenge old assumptions, and shape the future of the Middle East for years to come. In the wake of the devastating Israeli strike, the world watched as tensions in the Middle East reached a boiling point. The images of destruction and chaos sent shockwaves through the region, prompting urgent calls for action from leaders and citizens alike. In response, an emergency summit was swiftly convened in Doha on September 15, drawing the attention of the international community. The Qatari capital became the focal point for high-stakes diplomacy, as convoys of dignitaries and security details arrived under tight protection. The summit's primary objective was to forge a united front against what many saw as unchecked Israeli aggression. While some voices called for immediate retaliation, the official agenda was clear: to coordinate a collective response, not to declare war, but to send a powerful message of unity and resolve. For the first time in years, leaders from rival nations, including Iran and Turkey, set aside their deep-seated differences. Their presence at the same table signaled the gravity of the crisis and the urgent need for cooperation. Major Arab powers, along with these regional rivals, stood together in a rare display of solidarity. The world watched as old adversaries shook hands, united by a common cause and a shared sense of outrage. Inside the conference hall, the atmosphere was electric, charged with anger, frustration, and a determination to hold Israel accountable. Delegates engaged in heated debates, their voices echoing the pain and fury felt by millions across the region. After hours of intense negotiation, the summit concluded with a strongly worded communiqué. It called for an immediate review of all diplomatic and economic ties with Israel, urging member states to reconsider their relationships and take concrete steps if the situation did not improve. This declaration was more than symbolic. It represented a significant threat, signaling that Israel could soon find itself isolated not just politically, but economically and diplomatically as well. The Gulf Cooperation Council, representing some of the region's most influential states, went a step further. They pledged to review existing defense agreements, raising the stakes and hinting at a possible shift in the regional balance of power. Military officials discussed a range of options, from increased security cooperation to the possibility of joint military exercises, and even the potential for coordinated responses if the conflict escalated further. The summit made it clear that patience in the region was wearing thin. The leaders' stern expressions and tense exchanges reflected a collective sense that the status quo could no longer be tolerated. The message from Doha was unmistakable. Unless there was a dramatic change, existing peace agreements and regional stability were at serious risk, and the world would have to reckon with the consequences of escalating tensions. Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani led the summit with a powerful condemnation of the Israeli strike. He urged leaders to move beyond words and take concrete actions against Israel. The Emir's call for a review of diplomatic ties was pivotal, rallying support from other nations. Qatar's unique role as a mediator and host of Hamas's political office was challenged by the strike. The Emir's speech reasserted Qatar's strength and demanded accountability. His leadership transformed a national crisis into a regional confrontation with Israel. The Emir's words signaled a shift in the rules of engagement in the Middle East. The summit's decisions reflected a collective stand against Israeli aggression. As the summit unfolded, Israel remained defiant. Prime Minister Netanyahu vowed to target Hamas leaders wherever they are. On the same day, Israel launched deadly airstrikes on Gaza, killing dozens. The strikes demonstrated Israel's focus on its war aims, undeterred by diplomatic pressure. Israel also struck southern Lebanon, escalating tensions with Hezbollah. Netanyahu threatened unilateral actions if countries recognized a Palestinian state. Israel's aggressive stance left little room for de-escalation. The region teetered on the brink of wider conflict. The U.S. faced a delicate situation, caught between Israel and Qatar. President Trump issued a rare public warning to Israel, emphasizing Qatar's importance. The U.S. supported Israel's right to defend itself, but drew a red line against further strikes on Qatar. Secretary of State Rubio backed Israel's war aims but urged caution. Rubio's visit to Qatar aimed to calm tensions and mediate the hostage crisis. The U.S. walked a tightrope, balancing alliances and strategic goals. The crisis highlighted the complexity of U.S. diplomacy in the region. The U.S. sought to prevent further escalation while pursuing its objectives. The crisis drew global attention, with leaders seeking to prevent a wider war. An emergency conference call among world leaders aimed to secure a ceasefire and stabilize the region. Egypt's president warned that Israel's actions threatened decades of peace agreements. Silence from UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco, who normalized relations with Israel, was notable. Saudi Arabia's cautious response reflected its delicate position amid potential normalization with Israel. The crisis underscored the fragile political landscape in the Middle East. The international community sought de-escalation to protect regional stability. The situation remained tense, with diplomatic efforts ongoing. The path to peace appeared increasingly complex and uncertain. Rumors of war had an immediate impact on the global economy. Oil prices surged by 12%, reflecting fears of supply disruption. Stock markets in the Middle East and beyond plummeted amid uncertainty. The economic reaction highlighted the fragility of global markets to Middle East tensions. Even after clarifying the situation, economic effects lingered. The incident underscored the interconnectedness of regional stability and global economic health. Investors remained wary of further disruptions. The crisis served as a stark reminder of the potential for economic chaos. The dramatic headlines of September 15th were wrong. No war was declared. The reality was a severe diplomatic crisis, not a new regional war. The summit in Doha called for diplomatic and economic pressure, not military conflict. The crisis stemmed from Israel's unprecedented strike in Qatar, crossing a major red line. The Arab world responded with threats of isolation, not immediate force. The incident left the Middle East's future uncertain, with ongoing tensions. The Gaza war continued with a staggering human cost. The crisis revealed the region's dangerous instability and interconnectedness. While war was avoided, underlying tensions deepened. The world watched, hoping the next crisis could be contained.